I've always been afraid of sleepwalkers. I used to babysit my younger cousin when I was a teen. One night, he came into the living room while I was watching TV crying with his eyes closed. He would whip his head around erratically, like he was afraid of something around him, and no matter what I said, he would only cry harder. His parents said it was some sort of sleeping condition and that he never remembered it the morning after. But the look of terror on his face felt so real that I could only imagine that some imprint of fear would be left on his subconscious. So, you would imagine how I felt when I found out that my roommate Chris was also a sleepwalker. I had met Chris my freshman year of college because we lived across from each other in our dorm. We had a similar sense of humor, and while I wasn't very close to the people in my dorm, I formed a strong bond with him that caused us to room together over the next 2 years. When I made the decision to move off campus for my senior year, Chris was the first person I came to about signing a lease with me. He agreed, and these past few months living together had been great. But a couple of nights ago, I woke up to a loud sound coming from downstairs. I decided to check out what it was, and when I came to the top of the stairs, I could see Chris in the living room. He was sitting upright on the couch with my camera on top of my tripod facing him. I was about to call down and ask what he was doing, but I quickly noticed that his eyes were closed, and a chill ran up my back. I knew that you're not supposed to wake a sleepwalker, so I decided to go back to bed and ask him about it in the morning. The next day, I asked Chris about it while we were eating breakfast. "You sure you saw me? I've never sleptwalked in my life," Chris said, brushing off the question. I kept insisting that I had seen him the night before on the couch, but he would brush it off with the same statement that he had never sleptwalked before, so that there was no way he would have suddenly started now. That's when I remembered the camera though. "Wait, you had my camera set up while you were doing it. You might have filmed something." I ran to the closet, I grabbed my camera, and I plugged it into my laptop as I sat up in front of Chris's cereal bowl. I found a clip with yesterday's date that read 1 a.m. and I clicked on it. "Well, it looks like you did film yourself. If this doesn't convince you, I don't know what will." The video started with a dimly lit shot of the living room couch, and a few seconds passed before Chris walked into frame and sat down upright as I had seen him the night before. "You see, your eyes are closed. You're clearly asleep." The footage continued for a few minutes before Chris picked up a sheet of paper sitting next to him that I hadn't noticed until now. He held the paper in front of his chest, so the camera could see the message written in poorly drawn capital letters on top of it. "Experimental documentation." He put the paper down to his side and picked up a second sheet that had a slanted number 4 written on it. He held it still for a moment before putting it down, and then got up to walk behind the camera. The footage cut out for a second before it came back to an extremely dark room. It was hard to make out what was on screen, but I soon recognized that it was my bedroom. The camera was positioned at the foot of my bed, and I could see myself asleep. After a few seconds of me sleeping, Chris entered into frame on the left side of my bed. He stood right next to my bed, and I could see by the little light in the room that his eyes were still closed. He stood straight and perfectly still, with his head positioned downward as if he were looking at me through his eyelids. Me and Chris watched this in shocked silence for almost 20 seconds before I stopped it. I sped up the footage to find that the clip in the entirety was about 10 minutes long, and Chris never moved throughout the whole thing, except to turn the camera off at the end. All I could do was turn to Chris's face and find a horrified look that matched my own. "What the hell was that?" I asked him, but he didn't have an answer for me. Looking through the other files in the camera, I found 6 other clips all filmed with the same format, at exactly 1 a.m. on every day of the past week. Chris would sit down and hold up the same sheet of paper with the words, "Experimental documentation," written on it and then a number. The oldest clip had the number 10 written on it, and each clip counted down to a number bringing us to the number 4 we had just seen from last night. "Okay, please tell me this is some kind of prank you're pulling on me, Chris," I begged, but nothing about his face made me think he found this funny. "Dan, I swear, I don't remember being in any of those. I have just as much of an idea of what's going on as you." It wasn't the answer that I was looking for, but I believed him. Chris was very shaken up about the fact that he couldn't remember any of those videos, but I eventually calmed him down. We talked about what we had seen for a while, and the only conclusion that we could come to was that the numbers were counting down every night, so this would probably happen again tonight. Since it wasn't really possible for Chris to just make himself stop sleepwalking, I decided that taking the camera and tripod into my room and locking all the doors would stop Chris from filming and breaking the cycle, so that his subconscious would move on from the habit. That night, I took the filming equipment into my room, and I locked the door, making sure that all the keys to my room were on the nightstand next to my bed. I felt uneasy going to bed, but I reassured myself that Chris wouldn't be able to get in sleepwalking, which helped me fall asleep. I woke up to find my window wide open. We loaded the camera onto my laptop to find a new clip filmed exactly like before, but this time, the experimental documentation bit was inside my room. During the portion where Chris stared at me sleeping, you could see just a bit of the open window to the right of the frame. My room is on the second floor, and when I looked out the window, there was no evidence on how somebody could climb up to the window. We had 2 nights left. Okay, I'm not taking any more chances. I'll lock myself up again, including the windows, but this time I'm going to set an alarm for 1 a.m. and go downstairs to wake you up from sleepwalking. You're not supposed to do that, Chris complained in a sheepish tone. I don't care anymore. I don't want to see what getting to 1 means. Chris didn't have a response to that and just shook his head in agreement. That night, I set my alarm and I locked every possible entrance to my room. I even covered the air vents with heavy furniture, just to give me any peace of mind possible. With my room completely secured, I quickly fell asleep. My alarm went off right at 1 a.m., and I stopped it as quickly as I could. My room was quiet and empty, and I got up and I tiptoed to the door. I took a minute in front of the door, imagining every type of horror possible that could be waiting for me on the other side. But after a moment, I quickly swung the door open to find nothing on the other side. I stepped into the hallway, and I made my way to the staircase, making sure to make as little sound as possible. When I got to the top, I looked down to see that the living room was empty, which instantly put me to ease. I took each step as slow as possible, making sure to minimize every creak and groan the steps made until I came to the bottom of the stairs, to find that the house appeared to be empty. I looked all around me, and I found nothing at all. I walked into the living room and I checked the kitchen before I was sure no one was there. I decided that must have meant Chris was still in his room, and that all I had to do was check on him. But when I turned back to the staircase, Chris was at the top staring at me, with his eyes covered. All the fears and uneasiness I had associated with sleepwalking derived from those nights with my little cousin hit me like a concrete wall and I stood frozen. Chris started down the stairs in a rapid mechanical motion, not taking his hidden gaze away from me. He advanced rapidly, and I tried to shake myself into motion, but all I could muster was a solitary step backwards. As he calmly sped towards me, all I could do was yell out, "Chris!" before he hit the side of my skull with a fist knocking me out cold. I woke up with a headache in my bed, knowing exactly what to expect. There is a new clip from the night before, with the countdown sheet now reading 2, meaning that we only had one night left. Chris in his subconscious state was able to knock me out, drag me back into my bed, and carry on with the experimental documentation, just like normal, all with his eyes closed. Whatever we were dealing with, it meant business and we couldn't take any more chances. Seeing that Chris's subconscious state was aware of the plans we had made to wake Chris up the night before, we decided that anything Chris knows in his waking state, his sleeping state must know as well. Our new plan was for me to get out of the house entirely without letting Chris know where I was going. I decided on a cheap motel across the town, and I wrote down the address to get directions. On my way out, I took the sheet of paper and I threw it into the neighbor's garbage can, 5 houses down from us just to be thorough. We locked up the entire house and I made sure to lock up my motel room before going to bed. I was confident that this plan would be good enough to stop the countdown. I woke up to the camera and the tripod sitting at the foot of my bed. My motel room was unlocked when I stepped outside. I found several police cars and an ambulance parked by the lobby entrance, leaving my imagination to fill in the gap of how Chris got the key to my room. I raced home, cutting it close on several red lights to find trash from every trash can on the street, covering lawns and rolling with the wind across the asphalt. When I got inside, the mess was only worse. Every drawer in the house had been overturned and every cabinet was emptied. Furniture was flipped over, and posters torn to the ground. My bedroom was the worst of all, with all the damage and trash culminating in my mattress and being cut straight down the middle and de-stuffed. On the center of the kitchen counter was the address I had written down, and thrown away 5 doors down circled in black ink. And when I went into Chris's room, he was still asleep and missed a trash pile on his bed. I woke him up and we plugged the camera in to see the final clip filmed in my motel room. It was the same experimental countdown sheet of paper, but the countdown was replaced with a sign that read, "Final." All that followed was the same 10 minutes of Chris watching me sleep before the film cut to black. It was over. Later that day, the police arrived and took Chris into questioning about an assault against an employee for the motel I was at, and he's still currently being held. We would love to tell the truth about what had happened, but Chris's lawyer isn't sure what to make of the footage recorded on my camera, and how he could truly convince a jury that Chris wasn't aware of what he was doing. This all happened half a week ago, and every day I've been trying to convince myself that this was all just an extreme case of sleep apnea, or some other violent sleeping disorder. But last night took away any hope of that being true. I fell asleep on my new mattress after tossing around with minor discomfort before I was suddenly jolted awake to find myself falling off a ladder. It was the most disoriented I'd ever been, but when I looked around, I realized I was in the space between my house and my neighbor's, and I had been climbing a ladder up to my neighbor's bedroom window on the 2nd floor. And laying next to me was a camera and a tripod.